Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, fellow Assembly members, and most importantly, all of Tobago and the people of Darrell Spring WIM. You know, it's important to always pay recognition to the wise voters of Darrell Spring WIM. We ensure that today there is a minority voice that can bring to the fore the matters to which I raise in this motion, which I move, standing in my name, that reads, whereas in September 2022, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Farley Augustine, announced 4 emergency road projects, namely the Dutch Fort to Smithfield Connector Road, the Milford Road to Pigeon Point Road connecting through Milford Court and Bonaccord Development, the Shervan Road to Store Bay Local Road Connector Road, and the Lamy Road, Argyle to Roxborough Bloody Bay Road Connector Road, citing urgent infrastructural needs in preparation for the inaugural Tobago Carnival in October 2022, and whereas widespread concerns have been raised regarding the procurement process, project execution, and overall transparency of these projects, and whereas each of these road projects has faced significant challenges, including but not limited to multiple legal challenges before the High Court. No, sorry, let me use this one, I think. Let me use this. Yeah. My apologies, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. I had a typo, yeah. Yeah. Oh. Right, yeah. Sorry about that. And so let me just read. And whereas each of these road projects has faced significant challenges, and whereas the Public Accounts Committee, which is responsible for scrutinizing the expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly, has been unable to do its work due to the unavailability of the members on the majority side, and whereas it is the responsibility of this Assembly and its relevant committees to ensure that public funds are expended efficiently, transparently, and in accordance with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that this House calls for an audit into the procurement process and the challenges encountered during the execution of these road projects. Be it further resolved that this House mandates the immediate convening of the Public Accounts Committee to urgently consider these expenditures in keeping with the principles of good governance. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, when the Progressive Democratic Patriots campaigned, they spoke to the hearts of Tobagonians, promising transparency, accountability, and good governance. It was a promise that resonated with many, and the people of Tobago gave them an overwhelming mandate, not because of empty rhetoric, but because of hope. The people of Tobago placed their trust in the hands of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, believing that they would govern with honesty and fairness.
You are reading from a script.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, in keeping with Standing Order 42.6, I would like to refresh from time to time with the script that I have.
Okay, the leave is granted.
Thank you so much. In September 2022, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this administration abruptly announced 4 emergency road projects, promising their completion within a month to facilitate Tobago's first carnival. We in the minority, we warned them, we told them, and even a blind man would have recognized that that was merely impossible. It was, the timeline was unrealistic. Yet, regrettably, our concerns have today been materialized. Today, 3 of these projects remain incomplete. That's a fact. Their true cost, unknown. Nobody knows. And the terms under which these contracts were awarded, shrouded in secrecy. Instead of transparency, what we have is projects marred in confusion, doubts, and silence. Silence even when you go through the lawful process to get answers through freedom of information. I could tell you as minority leader, we have even issued pre-action protocol letters to get information on these roads. And the secretary and the division, they have bluntly refused to provide the information being sorted. And the question is, if you don't have cocoa in the sun, what is there to hide? Especially when you are dealing with the disbursement of public funds. And especially in the context where the current Deputy Chief Secretary told all of Tobago when they were campaigning for the trust of Tobagonians, that they would be so transparent that you can Google, clup, 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 and you would see every contract. You would see all the information as it relates to projects, who got the contract, how much they got the contract, what was the process, etc. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it's important for the persons, the Tobagonians listening, to understand this word that was used, emergency works. The claim of emergency works was questionable from the very start. Procurement standards dictate that emergencies must be unforeseen. Was this carnival unforeseen? It must be urgent. Was the roads so critical that if we didn't get the roads, there would be no carnival? Did we not have the carnival without the roads? And require immediate action to avert harm. Tobago's carnival, however, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, was announced months in advance, and the island has since hosted 2 carnivals fairly successfully without these roads. So if they were so critical, as we were told by the Honorable Chief Secretary, how has Tobago managed to actually have the carnival in their absence? This suggests the emergency label was a smokescreen used to justify questionable decisions and sideline local contractors, professionals who were unfairly excluded under the guise of audits and allegations. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it is therefore imperative that we revisit and examine the significant issues raised with each of the 4 road projects, especially considering that these projects exceed an expenditure of over $200 million. That is equivalent to almost the entire development funding for the entire THA in any fiscal year. Further, this substantial allocation was entirely awarded to contractors outside of Tobago, which has significantly contributed to the collapse of the Tobago economy. Also, through this review, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, what you would clearly see is a breach of procurement process, favoritism, and a framework that was created to misalign, to malign the credibility of our Tobago-based contractors in favor of financiers in Trinidad. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this administration must be called to account as to why after 3 years, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, after a contract was awarded to a roofing company to build a road in the most eco-sensitive area of Tobago, that Pigeon Point area, Lagoon, Mangrove area. That roofing company has not even laid as much as a galvanized. And the question we all must ask is how a company which was registered in 2020 during the height of COVID, where there was little to no kind of work being done, a company in its very profile, if you check the company's profile, have absolutely no record of doing any form of asphalt road in their history. And the only road on record is a small concrete road for a local corporation in Trinidad. How did this THA find this company to award this company that is located somewhere in Charleville or so in Trinidad a contract for over $54 million, where the contents of this contract and this proposal is alarming? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it must be noted, this company, and we just have to look at the date of their proposal, sent in a proposal. This very roofing company sent in a proposal to the Division of Infrastructure. Sent in a proposal on the 20th of September. No, sorry, reference is made to your letter. So the proposal came in on the 30th of August. 30th of August, Independence is the 31st. Think about it. And by the 7th of September, after sending a proposal on the 30th, where you have Independence the next day, a letter of award was given to this company on the 7th of September. So, in a real sense, this company was able to have, within a couple days, evaluation done, no kind of holdover period, nothing, and within a couple days, they were awarded. And you know what is very interesting about this? And perhaps this is why they are not answering the Freedom of Information. Is up to now, we don't even know if there were anybody else who was invited. Because, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, interestingly, the Secretary of Infrastructure is on public record as saying on a morning program, when asked what was the process to identify the contractors, the successful tenderers. And he said they chose from a bag of about 40 contractors, secretaries on record. That's his word. But interestingly, when the question was filed for written response, you know, that 40 bag of contractors whittled down to a response that said, well, it was really about 3 to 6 contractors. And even in that situation, it doesn't even tell you if those 3 to 6 contractors were invited to tender for all 4 of the roads. So we don't have a clue, even now, whether this process that identified this contractor that is inexperienced and has now proven that he does not have the funding to complete the road because it has been 3 years. And he's unable to mobilize the funding. In fact, it is also public record that this contractor is all over Trinidad and Tobago trying to get people to basically take over this contract. And the question is, again, if they didn't have the money, if they don't have the experience, how in God's heaven earth did this contractor land this contract? Especially in the context that this is a design, build, finance contract. And when you go into the bill of quantities, it gets even more ridiculous and alarming. This contractor submitted a proposal where the usual rates, going rates, Trinidad and Tobago is about $1,200, but Meta bonded contracted rate in the THA of about $1,400 per ton to supply, place, and install asphalt mix and bitumen to pave a road. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this $1,400 per ton, we were told by the Chief Secretary, based on information he received, was an inflated cost. In other words, that cost was over normal industry standards. But alarmingly, this same administration that continues to tell Tobagonians they are under-resourced, underfunded, we don't have no money, we don't have no money, we don't have no money, accepted a proposal where they are paying double the very rate that they have told us is inflated. So they are claiming $1,400 per ton to install, supply, to pave road, with the hot mix, is inflated. But yet they agreed to a proposal where they are paying $2,700 per ton. So in other words, realistically, the cost to build, to construct the various phases of this road, they're paying $54 million. In a real sense, we could have built 2 roads or build one and utilize the rest of funding to do other things. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, you see, with this contract, it gets even more interesting, and without accepting as fact what is in the public domain, we cannot ignore the fact that at some point in the public domain appeared some screenshots which purported to be conversations between the contractor and a member of this very assembly. I'm just saying, I'm not casting up, but I'm just saying what emanated in the public space. So I'm not casting or imputing any improper motive, except to say this appeared in the public space.
Member, what is the relevance?
The relevance is the contractor who got this contract in the most dubious of circumstances, screenshots appeared purporting to be conversations.
Member, I'm saying to you, suggestions and beliefs can be misleading. I would prefer, if you have evidence, you are speaking about matters that you have evidence there, the screenshots and so forth, those things are not factual. I would prefer if they are not entered into the debate, into the motion.
I will move on, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, because this matter is a matter that is currently engaging the Anti-Corruption Investigative Bureau of the Trinidad and Tobago, and I would say no more on this road except to address again the contractor's inexperience. The contractor award was, when this award was given to the contractor, they only were registered for about 2 years. In fact, the scale of and what is interesting, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, about this contract as well, which I noticed, And I know you may have some experience in engineering, but a contract of this nature that is dealing with passing through the mangrove of Tobago, even within the method statement, there's no appreciation for any technical outline as to how you would treat with such an eco-sensitive area. And therefore, how could you, in your own evaluation and assessment, accept a proposal that does not, for the least, tell you how I'm going to ensure that this project does not interfere with the mangrove? I found that extremely curious. In fact, the proposal, it says design, build, finance, but nowhere, and I challenge the division to show me where in this proposal had a design. So you have a proposal that is based on a design, build, finance arrangement. Well, of course, obviously we know they didn't have the capacity to finance, and neither did it involve or include even a design. So on what basis was this contract awarded? Was it just a friend thing? I don't know. Because I have to ask the question, given the information in front of me, and appreciating that to come to an informed conclusion, it could only be based on what was here. And what is in this proposal is a non-starter. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I move on to the Shervan-Storby Local Road Connector. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the facts surrounding Shervan-Storby Connector Road project are in fact deeply troubling. As you know, this road, which should have been constructed by the central government, using central government funding as part of the ANR International Terminal Project. And of course, we know that this would have allowed the THA the opportunity to utilize the money that is very scarce in Tobago for other things. However, for some reason, in fact, this road would have been a dual carriageway if the THA had collaborated. That's all we're saying. We're not saying to let nobody take over, but you could have collaborated. You'll have gotten at no cost a dual carriageway. But you chose, okay, I'm a big man, I want to do my own thing, and that is fair enough. In fact, the THA Act gives you that authority to do your own thing, because that is a 5th schedule item. And therefore, in this situation, where you had the first RFP that went out was for a dual carriageway. But interestingly, the actual contract that was awarded was for a single carriageway. So the first issue one has to ask is, at what point was the scope of the project amended? Was it amended before, after the RFP for a dual carriageway, or was it amended after you got to a single carriageway? So did you choose, in other words, was the contractor chosen on the proposal for a dual carriageway, or was the contractor chosen on the premise for a single carriageway? But interestingly, more than that, in asking questions of the secretary, unknowing to all of Tobago, we found out that this Shervan Connector Road, which eventually had to be tendered out, was first awarded to Namalco. And I don't think that information was public to any Tobagonian. And the question has to be asked, what was the process in the first place that led to this contract being awarded to Namalco? And was there a process? Or is it that Namalco just simply submitted a proposal, because I don't know who will win a contract for $65 million in the proper way and just decide, I don't want that again. So we learned Namalco gave up this contract, and this requires further investigation as to why. Because nowhere in the justification or the information tells you why they gave it up. But it doesn't stop there. This project was flawed from the outset because we understand the various issues. The project had no approvals. Then we'll only learn that there were private lands as part of the road design, but yet the project was awarded without putting those arrangements in place. The project was awarded without even acquiring the lands. And you would think that if you're doing a project and you do your feasibility, you would know who owns what. You would first get the approvals, acquire the land, and then go about the project. So this project was initially to be $65 million. My information is, at this point, with the conclusion of land acquisition on its horizon, this project will balloon to over $100 million. And these are the same people who come here every month on a Thursday and at every opportunity to tell you that we don't have no money, underfunding. But here it is, a road that in the first place would have come to you at no cost, at a superior kind of design, because it would have been a dual carriageway. You are now spending over $100 million, and in a way that creates more questions than answers. Because we have the issues of unapproved project start, where you do have the approvals, and that landed in the court, and that was decided. And then you have the issue of private land acquisition. You even have someone claiming to have security of tenure being on the lands, and all of that happening. And then you have the whole tender process and procurement transparency issue. How was this project awarded? We were told by the administration, in the first place, we were told, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that these contracts, and the Chief Secretary made, this was public information, that as part of the design build finance arrangement, no contractor will be paid, and in response to a question right in this house, he confirmed that not a cent, in his words, would be paid until the project is completed, and thereafter, after 9 months, 50% will be paid, and then a further 9 months, the next 50% will be paid. My information is that even as we speak, where this project at Shervan Road is incomplete, payments have indeed been made to the contractor. And it therefore brings into question, if that information is true, can we really trust the word of this Honorable Chief Secretary? Because we got the commitment in the House, and perhaps when whoever comes to, I stand corrected, but the information available to me is that the contractor has indeed been paid, and therefore it means that the terms of the very contract was basically varied, and it means the reason, the justification that was given, that why they can't give it to Tobagonians because they don't have the money and these people have the money. All that would have gone out of the door. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I turn to the Lamy Road, to Roxborough Connector Road. And it is interesting that we had a question today dealing with the said contractor who was awarded the Lamy Road. Because it was only in a GSC where the Administrator for Infrastructure appeared, where we learned that in fact, the road that was left abandoned for over 2 years, incomplete, and many of the culverts falling apart and all kind of things, that this contractor gave as a reason why the road was left abandoned and left incomplete was because they ran out of money. And again, the question has to be asked, if the prerequisite for awarding these contracts was built on the premise of design build finance, where you are financing the project 100%, how could we reach to a point where the project was left abandoned for over 2 years because the person who said they could finance it could no longer finance? And mind you, this is the same contractor that has now been rewarded after he couldn't finish a project for $24 million. You have been rewarded a project in another division for $186 million. So perhaps this is one of their favorite contractors, because, and then you have somebody abandon a project for over 2 years. And the question is, why didn't the division move to utilize the clauses within that contract to terminate? And we are hearing in the GSC that rather than terminate, they are again going to vary the contract to now pay the contractor some advance payment, when the very premise again on which why they were given the contracts is because they could have completed it. And in fact, as part of the justification for some of the inflated costs, it was because we were told, well, we had to pay them a little more than market rate because they are really financing, and of course there's some kind of built-in interest for deferring the payment, the wait time. So I am asking the question, and this is why we need the investigations. Is it now that you have made advance payment, because this one isn't hearsay, this one is the administrator of the division confirming that they have renegotiated the contract? Did you all also renegotiate the terms? Because if these rates were paid on the basis that we have to give you some leeway for interest, for waiting, now that I'm paying you advance, have you ensured that you protected the public purse of the taxpayers of Tobago, who you keep on telling we don't have no money? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this arrangement, these roads, I want to finish with the Montgomery to Smithfield Connector Road. And I think they also included Dutch Fort in that road, the naming of the project. That is the only road that has been completed to date. That road was completed at a cost of $19 million. And you would hear them boasting that they have successfully completed this in record-breaking time. 19 days, they completed a road for $19 million. And, you know, in their deceptive way as well, you would hear the secretary from time to time saying, well, we save money on this road. But what the secretary would not tell you is that the scope of this road has been significantly reduced. And in fact, the very name of the project should actually lead you to that, because the Montgomery, the original project was to include creating an exit point back to Montgomery. This road actually starts in Smithfield in the vicinity of Scarborough RC and goes out to the mouth of Dutch Fort. And just for the people of Tobago to get an appreciation, this road really was about creating 3 culverts, culvert crossing, and resurfacing existing road. So it wasn't, so when you hear them trumping up this idea that this road was so revolutionary. It wasn't. As a matter of fact, an independent quantity assessment of this road puts this road at a maximum cost of $8 million. Think about it. When the independent quantity surveyor assessed the value of the works, they have assessed that at best, this road could only cost about $8 million. So the question we all have to ask, and this is why we require the investigation, where the $11 million gone? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, how do we justify this massive gulf between what was paid and what the project is objectively worth? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the shocking details surrounding the Montgomery to Dutchford Connector Road exposes a web of conspiracy and corruption that cannot be ignored. Because I will tell you this, on this very same day that an invitation to tender was issued, and I have the documents here, on the very same day the invitation to tender was issued to California Stucco Company, that very same day. You know what happened? So they received that.
You have 5 minutes of speaking time.
No problem. So California Stucco received, the date for the closing of the tender was October 3rd. California Stucco, and I have the letter where they are writing the project manager. California Stucco is writing the project manager and is saying to the project manager at the time, California Stucco is writing to this is a letter addressed to the Mr. Philip Hiralal, Director, Project Management Office. And here what he's saying, I want to read this into the records. We are writing to notify you that it has come to our attention through the public domain, that Namalco Construction Services Limited has withdrawn from the project. Therefore, California Stucco were invited to enter into negotiation. But hear this, they are saying they were invited to enter into negotiation for this contract. But at the same time, a tender was put out to selective bidders. So what you had happening at this very same time is a tender going out to selective bidders, but California saying on the day when the tender is supposed to be closing that they have been invited to negotiate, so it means that they already have it. But the tender has not yet closed. That is on the 3rd. Here what happens? Next thing happens is that they submit an official proposal, I think it was the 5th. And by the 6th, so they submitted that proposal on the 5th. By the 6th, they received a letter of award. And on the 9th of the 6th, they were already mobilized and bulldozing Scarborough Sea Fence. So that clearly tells you this contractor was almost guaranteed sure that that contract was mine. And what we missed in this whole issue is that Namalco, again, was awarded this contract. Perhaps we don't even know the process. So 2 contracts Namalco got that they just all of a sudden gave up. Isn't that curious, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer? And in the aftermath of that, you have a situation where you have something that appears to be a public kind of process, and then you have a secret process where you have this California Stucco, who eventually ended up as the preferred contractor down at Shervan as well, so it seemed they are the official replacement for Namalco. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, as I as I wrap up and as I put these information as presented, it is clear that there is no doubt that there are many unanswered questions and only an investigation can properly treat with this. But I also want to talk about the importance of the Public Accounts Committee, because this is one of the most vital mechanisms for accountability within this assembly. It serves as a vanguard of public oversight, tasked with scrutinizing the expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly to ensure that public funds are used efficiently, transparently, and in accordance with the law. The Public Accounts Committee comprises of 4 members from the majority and 1 member from the minority who serves as the chairperson. It is a cornerstone of public accountability. It reflects the principles envisioned by the founders of this assembly: collaboration across the aisle in the pursuit of transparency and good governance. The work of this committee is not just an exercise in oversight, but a crucial safeguard for protecting the interests of the people of Tobago. It is therefore disappointing, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that the Public Accounts Committee has been unable to fulfill its mandate due to the lack of engagement from the majority members. For the past year, the committee has struggled to settle and approve an inquiry schedule, leaving pressing matters unaddressed. While I propose a resolution to this issue, contributions from the majority side have not been forthcoming. This has stalled the committee's work, rendering it incapable of tackling the critical issues of transparency, accountability, and good governance. While I sincerely hope and cast absolutely no aspersions on my colleagues that this inaction is deliberate.
Member, your speaking time is up. As the mover of a motion, she can ask extra time.
Huh?
As the mover of the motion, you can't ask extra time. You have 40 minutes and that's it. You don't have additional time. Honorable members, the question proposed is, whereas in September 2022, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Farley Augustine, announced 4 emergency road projects, namely the Dutch Fort to Smithfield Connector Road, 2, the Milford Road to Pigeon Point Road connecting through Milford Court and Bonaccord Development, the Shervan Road to Storby Local Road Connector Road, and the Lamy Road, Argyle to Roxborough, Bloody Bay Connector Road, citing urgent infrastructural needs in preparation for the inaugural Tobago Carnival in October 2022. And whereas widespread concerns have been raised regarding the procurement process, project execution, and overall transparency of these projects. And whereas each of these roads has faced significant challenges. And whereas the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, which is responsible for scrutinizing the expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly, has been unable to meet and do its work due to the unavailability of the members on the majority side. And whereas it is the responsibility of this Assembly and its relevant committees to ensure that public funds are expended efficiently, transparently, and in accordance with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Be it resolved that this House calls for an audit into the procurement process and the challenges encountered during the execution of these road projects. Be it further resolved that this House mandates the immediate convening of the Public Accounts Committee to urgently consider their expenditures in keeping with the principles of good governance. No other members?
Is it that nobody? I will just wrap up, you know.
I'm also seeing a mic of the mic.
Oh.
Thanks, no.
Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
Minority Councillor, you may join the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. It appears as if no member on the other side wished to respond to the minority in terms of some of the questions that were raised.
In honesty, the member for Bethel New Grange, but you were the first person, so I have to go with who I saw first. Do you wish to differ?
Yes.
Member for Bethel New Grange, you may join the debate.
Deputy Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute to what I can only describe as another political farce. There's no excitement in me standing on my legs for a second time. And this really is a demonstration of the kind of patience that we have on this side. What we have been subjected to today from the minority side on 2 occasions has been quite torturous. We're really working for our money today, I'm telling you. But I looked at the motion, and we are told what every 3 months the minority side, there's a private members' day. And you will think, as my colleague, Councillor Kerr and you will think that you will take some time and come with something sensible, or it could be somebody give you something to just make you look, or just to embarrass yourself in this house. Because and I mean, as much as I might be passionate and all that, but I am a man that really come and expect to hear something sensible. And all we have heard here with this motion is what you call postprandial prattle. And that is simply chit-chat after a meal. It doesn't make any real sense. And there are 2 things that could be accentuated from this. That this so-called motion is political mischief and an attempt at personal maligning. I just look at the couple of words in the second, in fact, the first whereas, where it says widespread concerns. And the Chief Secretary, the Leader of Government Business, and some others have attested to the fact that the minority leader went to Bishop's High School. You know, I went to Bishop's High School and I waste time, so you could expect some things from me. But the dictionary's meaning of widespread, and let me read it, because maybe it might be useful. Found or distributed over a large area or number of people. Please explain to me, Mr. Minority Leader, what distribution of concerns is spread over the large population of Tobago? What about the product? What explain that to me? Is it because you say so? There's a reason why you are called minority, you know. Because I mean, if it's widespread, it's widespread. There's something on social media, there's something on TV, and all that kind of is widespread. And so that is the first thing that occupies my attention. The motion is built upon falsehood. Therefore, what we're really doing here is a colossal waste of time. But I think it's another opportunity for a little, not a little for political mischief. Because they just come up with these political things in their craw and they want a platform to ventilate these things. But anything that the minority leader presents in this house cannot be trusted as truth. I have followed him since we start. Since 6-6. We had a meeting with the Prime Minister down at Magdalena. Prime Minister said we have two options. Those of you who remember. Few hours after, he was over in Mount Irving with Fazir Mohammed saying the Prime Minister gave us one option. I don't forget them thing. And I've said this in this house already. There was a matter with the distribution of hampers. And he make one set of bacchanal on true. I ain't forget, and I've raised it already. You could check the public record, it is there. The last sitting.
Let him, because he's imputing in accordance with Standing Order 45-5, imputing improper motive against me.
You are standing on
On a point of order, Standing Order 45-5. Imputing improper motive against me, specific to some hamper distribution, I don't know.
Okay, there's improper motives where you want
That I miss, he said yeah.
Is that a point of clarity in terms of him saying what he's speaking about, or is it improper motive?
I stand on Standing Order 45-5, imputing improper motive against my name, and the Standing Order is clear. Well, where's the fact?
Members, please, if you're assuming that, if you're on improper motives, then he does not have to clarify anything. He just has to stop.
No, I'm
You want him
saying
to
that,
stop.
but the Standing Order is clear that you are not to impute improper motive against a member.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
Member, continue.
Yes, let me go further. The last sitting we were here, the minority leader blamed the government for forex challenges. And when we challenged him on it, he didn't say that. And the presiding officer at the time, I think it was your good self, sir, if my memory serves me right, had to say, but you did in fact say that. The point I am making, and just recently, an issue at the Division of Settlements with a realignment project that they were doing that affected some workers. It ended up with a live on one of his media places that facilitate his elastifications to say that 15 people from the division were sent home. When in truth and in fact,
I said 15 members on any live. 15 members. That was reported in the media. I said you're fired, and that is a fact. Persons have been fired.
can I continue?
Continue, ma'am.
Yes. The material point that I am making is that the secretary came thereafter, took his time and explained what happened. And you will think that out of decency, that you have the requisite information, you would apologize to the public. You will think so. That is the reason why I'm making the point that nothing that he presents here as documents and referring that he got this from there and that can be trusted. Nothing can be trusted. That is the point I am making, Mr. Deputy President. And he made the point that they couldn't get information through freedom of information. If you couldn't get the genuine information, what you're quoting from? What are you quoting from? Let me say it again.
Members,
Nothing that the minority...
members, please calm down and allow the member to finish his contribution. Continue, member.
By virtue of his history, nothing, no paper he waves around in this house we can trust, because he has the propensity to make a lot of comments that are on the left-hand side of truth. And when truth is brought, he don't even have the circular ones to own up and say, well, okay, I made a mistake. This is the number. And that is the thing that is worrisome, because these things are going on the public record. But this whole thing, like I said, is a farce. The intent really is political mischief. And we're here too long for the day, so we just fix the thing and go. It is political mischief that this is about. You understand? Because we thought that we talked some sensible thing today about how we could fix this problem that we have with security in Tobago. So and also it is personal maligning. Really and truly, infrastructure development in Tobago has always had challenges as far back as we could think about it. And so when you, as I said it before, when you hear the minority talking about transparency and accountability and what's the next word? Just use and procurement. If hypocrisy was a person, it would have been the minority leader. And if hypocrisy was an organization, the PNM would have been the undefeated champion. So let us call the thing what it is. Every construction project that happened pre this administration had issues. As far back as you could think about. As far back as you could think about. Right? And yes, as far back as you could think about. I mean, I think I have a sneaky suspicion that there's a fear. Because you have a man now in infrastructure that understands construction and understand when man trying to outsmart you and understand all these things and so on. And you have an administration that have seen the same contractors you're talking about in Tobago that have been robbing we blind in this place that we call Tobago. You ain't forget, I have gone with the secretary and we did these lives, not for bacchanal, but to present the fact to the people, and we back it up with the documentation. I went up to Mount St. George and look at the wall and how much money it costs. I went to Frenchfield, look at the gable and basket that fall into the river. With one of your favorite contractors who on TV and want to take the THA to court and all kind of thing. And the THA to show that we still have fairness, still winning contracts in this present. I tell you the truth, I was up at the fort and I was halfway vexed with the secretary, but it's not the secretary's responsibility really. You understand? I understand their procurement and all that. Because I say these are the same people that have been causing us all this pressure. Why we have to be concerned? Up to now, they ain't fix the gable and basket down in the river, down there yet. And still willing contract. And you have the unmitigated gall attire say that. To talk about, we don't love Tobago contractors and all them kind of monkeyness that we talking.
Remember?
I went up to Mary's Hill.
Remember? Careful with your language.
Yes. My apologies. My apologies. My apologies. I've been trying my best to expand my vocabulary. And sometimes, every now and again, I regress. But we went up to Mary's Hill, where a road incomplete cost for $3 million thereabout. And officials in the regime that just passed sign off, saying the road complete. And you come in here and talking about transparency and coming here and talking about these crazy people. What me want to talk about that? the one down in Egypt, Sesame Street. They cost the THA in 3 invoices, 13 point something million dollars. Experts went tested it, the road value close to $2 million. They pay. When you call on them former officials that preside over this wickedness and ask for audit and ask for transparency, then we will listen to you. Then we will listen to you. That's why we don't listen to you. You have no moral authority to ask for no transparency in this house. None. And don't worry if I raise my voice, I'm following you. I'm following you. The only difference is I will present information to substantiate my claim. So, I hear the next thing, hear the next thing. The road in Sesame Street, I said already, but it bears repeating. The road in Sesame Street, the THA pay, facilitated by some, all I could call them is brigands. $13 million. Officials went test the road, say that the road is valued about $2 million. They subcontract the work to a Tobago contractor. Pay the man $479,000. Now tell me, that is not wickedness to the highest degree? Yeah? 479,000. Yes? You come and tell me the amount of things we have to fix. We see some work in Bethel, in my constituency. We had to go and fix Man Gate. And they paved the road down there, and because of the height of the paving, caused the water now, because they didn't do nothing with the drain, to flow down and go down, and some people probably flooding out the people in their house. I had to go take money from my pocket and hire men on the block to build a kind of bridge type thing to try and stop the flooding. So we're doing this thing all the time. We're doing the work. So it irks me. It irks me. It irks me when I hear the thing. Here you talk about
You have 3 more minutes of speaking.
Thank you. About transparency and accountability and calling for audit.
Sorry, member. Sorry. Started at 8:40. Sorry. Continue.
How much do I have?
13.
13? What is this?
Sorry.
But we don't want to stay here all night. But I think what has happened is that the division is led by a secretary. And I've said it before. This greatest little island that you see we're trying to build, infrastructural development is a critical component in this. It's a critical component. And the division has had so much square pegs in round hole before. So now you have a man who have a vision, and the hallmark of great leaders are men who have a vision of where you want to see the organization go, and your ability to cast that vision or to share the vision with the people that you need to assist you to get the thing done. And it is the reorganizing of the division, putting people with the right skill set in the right places so that we could get the services delivered to the people. And the road infrastructure is bothering them. That here we are, these so-called upstarts, wet behind the air politicians. We don't have no experience, as some of them say. But they think that experience is about age. My father used to always say, Terry, sense make before book. So we understand. And Secretary James has been leading exceptionally well at the division. I'm not ashamed to say it. And the roads are being built, and the roads are contributing to the development of the island of Tobago. So you could talk all the politics you want and get all the, and every time we have a private members day, you come with some joke emotion. All right, we realize that is a lost cause. But we will make sure that we build Tobago, we will mount up to alpine heights of excellence, man. We're not depending on nobody to keep us back. And I'm a partner in training, and I say, who don't like it, bite it. But it is an attempt to malign the secretary. From day one. From day one. It is so shameful for you to bring up some screenshot as if you don't understand. Maybe you got to wait until that happened to you. It's sometimes we don't want to get the message about trying to damage people's character unnecessarily until it happened to you. You can't even verify. You don't know the veracity of the thing. The jury is out. You coming here to put that and playing that and talking about you not casting no aspersion. So what you bring it here for if you're not casting aspersion? You think we stupid?
Member. I understand that you may be exuberant in your doings. Member for Daryl Springrim, I am on the floor. But you have been warned about that language before?
Yes.
And I'm officially warning you again.
Oh, 3 strikes and I'm out.
Please stay within parliamentary language.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. So, I believe it is an attempt to try and see if they could stop Secretary James. You understand? All this officers going to the man's house, and I have never seen that. Any of you have ever seen that in this country at all? Where licensing officers after hours going to a man's house, behind a man's gate, and say you come to check engine number, chassis number. There's no reference point for that in this country ever. We have all kind of things we could talk about, but we don't want to go there. Stuff that usually never happening to this administration and officials in this government. I said it before and I will say it again. It is a part of this P&M strategy to try and see if they could immobilize us and break us down and stop us, but you cannot succeed. You can't. You can't. So we will continue to build. We'll continue to build. The Friendship Connector Road will be open soon. It will be open. And we'll drive down there in style. I told Secretary James, if he don't want to, I will put up a statue somewhere down there. And put a sign. Trevor Williamson James. I mean, I'm being jocular. But we must commend the work of Secretary James, man. Truth is truth, man. Jeez. And we have to also see what this new road infrastructure, the opportunities that will be presented for the people of Tobago. How that will impact on business, how that will impact on movement. A brand new airport is being built down the road. That's another story. You know, it's our arrogance on sale in this place, you know. You have to make our assembly with the responsibility for infrastructure and things over here. The organization that is responsible for overseeing the project did not have the courtesy. Though there's been attempted communication to have a conversation. Now they build a roundabout inside the airport space, making it a challenge for the connection and to be user-friendly to the best flow of traffic. Now is when they want to have conversation. Now tell me, you see these crazy people we're dealing with? And trying to get us, and they had a plan to build a road. They had a plan initially, you know. But all of a sudden, they abandoned the plan to build their own road. Technically saying, yes, they call themselves, man, let us build their own road. Let us spend all that money. But we're smarter than that. And we will facilitate the conversation, yes, because all of us want Tobago's development to go forward. Yeah. We don't know, I mean, we just be vexed, but we understand when there's such a thing as grudge and there's such a thing as sensible tranquility and peace. So we understand when it's time for us to make the right kind of choices and decisions. We have been doing that. The kind of things that we have done, including what we debated in the last motion, the kind of action and initiatives that we have taken as a government, which we did not have to, is emblematic of a government that is concerned, a government that is forward-thinking, a government that is sensitive to the needs and development of its people, all of us. All of us.
You have 5 minutes of speaking time.
Thank you. So I want to say in closing, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I do not agree with this motion. I think it is a farce. It is a waste of our time. It's been a long day. And we could have and should have been discussing something more useful, something more beneficial, something that had more substance, rather than something that is vain, vacuous, and shrouded with political inertia. So on that note, we as a government, whenever private motions come along, we will make sure that we have sensible things to talk about. Because, yes, we'll make sure. We're not getting in this thing where we say, oh, you know, the public might say that only trying to advantage the minority. No. This is too much of an august chamber for us to not have sensible discussion when we come here in this place. If we were to just ascertain the type of debate, if there were the rules allowed us to sit down and say the type of debate we will come and listen to, when the minority start, the place in here would have been clean like Jumbe dance hall. But it is because we understand that this is a place where there must be useful, sensible, meaningful, and honest conversation. I do not believe, and anybody that believes that is naive, that there would not be some banter. But there is sensible banter, man. There is sensible banter. And when you come to accuse people and read from paper, we must be able to trust the information that you bring. And I'm saying that there is no evidence that gives me any confidence at all that I could trust anything that the minority brings, whether it's a motion or a portion. I cannot trust it. Therefore, we will not support this nonsensical thing that is brought here. I thank you.
Minority Councillor, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Councillor.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, at first no one appeared to be responding to the motion on this private members' day. The Assistant Secretary rose in response. However, in the Assistant Secretary's response, the Assistant Secretary did not address really any aspect of the motion. And the Assistant Secretary spoke to untruths of the minority and the minority not speaking the truth. But, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, just to reiterate, didn't the Chief Secretary in a press conference in September 2022 indicate to all of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago that there will be 4 emergency roads to be completed in time for the October 20?
Member for Darrell Springwood, I would like to hear the minority councillor's presentation. Ever so often, I am hearing you in between the presentation. When you were presenting, I asked for no interruptions. I would like the same now, please. Minority Councillor, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. My apologies. So, yes, Mr. Deputy. So the Chief Secretary in a press conference indicated to Tobago and all of Trinidad and Tobago that they will be embarking on these emergency roads in preparation for the October Carnival in 2022. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, seeing how close the announcement was made to the October Carnival, we on this side had reservations as to whether or not the roads were really of an emergency nature and whether or not they will be completed in time for the October Carnival. Again, in response to those concerns, the Chief Secretary in the media would have responded, indicated that he wasn't sure if members of the People's National Movement who are opposing has any certification in engineering. And therefore, he was convincing the public that the roads were indeed emergency in nature and they will be completed by the stipulated time. So, Mr. Presiding Officer, that is the first stanza. The stanza says that whereas in September 2022, the Chief Secretary indicated that the Dutch Fort to Smithfield Connector Road, the Milford Road to Pigeon Point, the Shervan Road, and the Lamy Road in Argyle. What is false about that information, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer? That is in the public domain, and anybody who wants to see and know and hear could go and retrieve that information. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the member also went on to speak that we do not have any moral authority to call for audit, and went on to call a list of roads throughout Tobago that in their view there were issues. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, as it is the right of this administration, they commissioned an audit into what they thought, had questions to answer. To date, we have not heard anything about the final report from that audit. But Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I want to remind Tobagonians that a preliminary report was made in the House about the findings of the audit that the administration, upon coming to office, would have commenced. And this preliminary report was particularly into the road resurfacing. And the Chief Secretary is on record when he made the statement about the road resurfacing program and the preliminary findings of the report. And the Chief Secretary had concerns that there was no competitive bidding and tendering process for the road projects valued at $206 million. The Chief Secretary in the report also had concerns about contractors allegedly being handpicked and allocated these roads, and that the process did not adhere to technical justification and standards of procurement. And I want to read from the statement that the Chief Secretary made in the House on that day. And the Chief Secretary said, the former Executive Council approved the use of 3 specified contractors and specific allocations of work to them. However, the examiner was not provided with any detailed written or oral information which drove to the use of specified bonding contractors and allocation of works as recommended in, and he quoted the note number. In other words, there exists no explanation of how they arrived at these 3 contractors and there were no justification as for why the 3 usual quotes or company rules wasn't used in that instance. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the Chief Secretary, in making his statement, also indicated, and he said, to put it in simple words, these findings seem to be suggesting that there was no competitive process for over 80 road projects. The contractors were handpicked. There was no technical or other justification to support the decision to award the contract to these contractors. So, Madam Presiding Officer, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, if we are to hold the previous administration accountable for their actions, and which is the responsibility of this administration, why must we demand less from this administration? We have asked the questions in the House, outside of the House, through freedom of information, and Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, there has been no real response. You want to talk about not properly selecting and handpicking contractors. Initially, it started off with a bag of 40, according to the Secretary of Infrastructure. When a formal question was asked in the House, as the minority leader said, it came down to 3 to 6 contractors. When you move to another section of the question, and the contractors that were identified, when you actually count the number of contractors, there were, I think it was 8. And then one of the 8 contractors indicated that he didn't participate because he found the process to be unfair. That meant that contractor would have written to every member of the House outlining the issues that he found with the process, the procurement process, and the tender process for these roads, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. So I don't understand if the member in his response indicating that he had challenges with the process under the past administration, but there are similar challenges of procurement process, and even as it relates to cost, the minority leader would have indicated some costs, and the member also spoke to overruns and cost overruns of previous projects. And if it is a problem with previous projects that you saw it so necessary to institute an audit, why is it an issue now to institute an audit into these questionable emergency works that after one carnival, only one road was completed? Carnival 2023 came and it went, no further works. Carnival 2024 came, no other roads that were deemed emergency were completed. So the question is, were the roads really an emergency? Were they urgent in nature? Because if we would have done without them for 2+ years, then that does not make them an emergency. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I want to remind the public, because the members spoke about inflated costs and increased costs, and I want to go back to that part of the audit where, and in the statement from the Chief Secretary, when he spoke about contractors and costing. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, in the Chief Secretary's statement, the Chief Secretary went on and he caught a fit about how the process was. The Chief Secretary even went on to call the contractors nefarious characters and call them all sorts of names and berated what would have transpired. But 3 years later, you have done worse, and you are not seeing that your action should be called into question. And the chief secretary said that the $1,400 to spread and lay asphalt was expensive. The minority leader would have compared that bonded cost to the cost that this administration was prepared to pay to lay asphalt. I want to compare some other elements of costs and ask the public and ask you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, if these costs were not exorbitant and overpriced to reinforce, cut, bend, tie, and place steel, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, 500 lengths. The bonded arrangement under the previous administration was $21. Under this administration, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for these roads, they were prepared to pay $300. When you calculate the difference, it's $10,500 under the past administration for 500 lengths versus $150,000 under this administration, a difference of $139,500. Yeah? If you go to another exorbitant pricing to broom and clean the roadway to receive asphalt, for 900 square meters, that costs $48 under the bonded arrangement that this chief secretary would have condemned, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, but they were willing to pay $185 for 900 square meters. When you compare the difference, it's $432,000 that was paid under the bonded arrangement. You know what they are prepared to pay, or what they pay? $1,665,000, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, a difference of 1.233. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, if we're talking about cost overruns and the road, when valued was cost X amount, and they saw that as important to institute an audit with these prices, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, what is the problem? What is the problem that is being faced to commission an audit into these quote-unquote emergency roads that are mired with concerns in relation to procurement and cost? And the other thing the motion sought to do, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, is to call for the convening of the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, thank God that the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament was able to convene so that Trinidad and Tobago could hear what has happened with these roads. And that is the reason why these committees are set up in our legislative bodies, the Parliament, the Tobago House of Assembly, to provide for proper accountability and transparency. If it wasn't for the Joint Select Committee that the THA appeared before, Tobago would not have known that there were roads that were the emergency roads. One of them was abandoned by the contractor. It never started. Another road, it could not be completed because the contractor did not have sufficient funds to complete the financing of the project. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that was told to us by the administrator in the Division of Infrastructure. The administrator also, when questions were posed by the committee, the administrator indicated that they are in the process of reviewing the terms and conditions of the contract. It is a fact that the Chief Secretary, and the Chief Secretary was asked the question again in the House and outside the House, and the Chief Secretary spoke to the fact that these roads were given to the contractors because they were of a designed, build, finance nature, And as a result, they were able to finance the completion of the projects. The minority leader said it. The chief secretary also indicated in this house and outside of the house that they will be paid after the full completion of the project. So when the project is completed, 9 months, they will receive a first tranche, and after the defects liability and whatever else, they will receive final payments 18 months thereafter. And when we complained why the process was not more transparent, why Tobago contractors were not selected, the explanation that was given is that the Tobago contractors could not wait for 18 months to be paid the monies owed to them for the services that they rendered. But again, thanks to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament, we were told that indeed the contractors could not finance the project because one was abandoned and another, they had to renegotiate the terms of the contract. The administrator indicated that they are in the process of reviewing and determining their options as to how to proceed. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, what about that is not factual? So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, all we are saying is that there are significant concerns in relation to these 4 roads in particular, and the minority is calling for an audit into the procurement process of these roads. We are also indicating that it is important to have the Public Accounts Committee properly functioning so it can provide the oversight that is required to ensure that public funds are spent in an appropriate manner and for the purpose for which it is used for. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I want to conclude with a quote from the statement of the Chief Secretary when he laid the preliminary audit in the House. And the Chief Secretary indicated, he said, "I want to admonish the team I lead to avoid corruption at all levels and to shun the very presence of evil. The same rules that apply to those who have defrauded or attempted to defraud the government and the people of Tobago apply to all of us in this team." And he was talking to the members opposite. So if this Chief Secretary truly believed his words and was really sincere about what the statements he made, then I will urge him to encourage his members to support this, and he would have no difficulty in ensuring that an audit into these projects are convened, because if there is nothing to hide, then the audit will so approve. But what are you hiding from? What don't you want the people of Tobago and taxpayers to know about these projects? And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, let us not continue to fail the people of Tobago. Let us act in their best interests. And again, if the Chief Secretary was really serious and sincere about his comments, he will have no issue in conducting an audit into these emergency roads and ensuring that his members attend and participate when there's a Public Accounts Committee. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, you know, it is really amazing sometimes when you listen to members opposite. And you know, especially the member for Bethel, New Grange. And perhaps, you know, some people believe that if you shout the loudest, then it perhaps may make up for your shortcomings, no pun intended. But what we really heard really is the saying, empty barrels make the most noise. And for a motion that is about principle, this is a principle motion. And you would think that someone who wears an alternative hat as maybe a pastor, that at least when it comes to principle, perhaps that would be the first member in here to which you may look. And in a situation where the information doesn't belong to Kelvon, this is information that is in the public domain. This is information that I provided based on what is provided to me. And the point is, if you have alternative facts, then present it. And even more, if you don't believe the information, then of course, the independent investigation will unearth whether what I raised is in fact factual or not. And you can have your say and have your day. But it is clear going forward that the role of those opposite is not to treat with issues in here, but to somehow come and try to malign this minority leader so that in some way they believe if they personalize their attacks against me, that the things that are being exposed, that people will turn a blind eye. Because I could not for the life of me, given what has been shared, accept that my colleagues opposite have an appreciation for transparency, accountability, would not for the least appreciate that at least let us take a look at it. And where do we take a look at it? It is the Public Accounts Committee of this House. And you know, it is also hypocritical that in one breath we like to talk about Trinidad dealing with Tobago problems. But just imagine the JSC is able to call public officers in Tobago to account. But we have something called the Public Accounts Committee, which is so empowered to treat with those very same issues of oversight. And the one authority that we have, we don't want to put it to use. Because we have, and this is not to cast aspersion on the members, because the Public Accounts Committee is one place where we all ought to take off our political hats, and we ought to come in there in the true spirit of this horseshoe and just treat with issues based on the issues at hand. It is public record, so when they're talking about hypocritical, when this administration commissioned those audits, I am on public record as welcoming the audits, and I said, let the chips fall wherever they may. That was my position, because wherever corruption, wrongdoing, and dishonest behavior exists, I want no part. And therefore, I would hope that my colleagues opposite will adopt the same position. You have a situation where you have a company that has been registered 2020. That is a fact. You could find that anywhere. Yet you have the member, even with the truth, bouncing him in the face. Turns a blind eye. Saying because it's Kelvon, because shoot the messenger, because I am the messenger, he don't want to hear. And as if to take the position that because they have a problem with the PNM, then the PNM shouldn't have a problem with wrongdoing with them. And as Minority Councillor just said, It is the chief secretary who gave the undertaking in this house to his own colleagues that this very thing that they were commissioning, this audit, that if similar situations appear within his own executive, he will not stop to apply the same principles. So what is wrong? We have issues here just as was raised with those raised in the audit, inflated costs, because the audit spoke about costs being $1,400 a ton. We have laid the evidence here that under this arrangement, a proposal was accepted where they are paying $2,700 a ton. Minority councillor went into some of the other exorbitant. Imagine, I remember one of the items to bend steel. They were paying $300 for every steel that you bend. I want to get the actual description, but it said bending steel. And I think it was something like about $300 or so, minority councillor, right? And imagine, look, there's one item here in terms of the difference outside of, to broom and clean roadway to receive asphalt, 9,000 square meters. Previously, the rate was $48. Under the proposal that was accepted, is $185. So when you do the computation, what would have cost $432,000 under the previous bonded arrangement for this contract as accepted is costing $1.665 million. That is a difference of $1.233 million. That is almost 3 times the cost. And you telling me with this kind of information and evidence before you, you would not even at least say, let us take a look at it and empower the Public Accounts Committee, which by the standing orders and even the THA Act is so empowered to look at the accounts of the THA, including all spending by all agencies of the Tobago House of Assembly. And that is the crux of the matter. It's not about me. When I leave here, I go home with none of you all on my mind, except that you all are properly spending the monies that are rightfully belonging to the people of Tobago. That is all I'm concerned with. I bear no personal malice for none of you, except that you, who the people of Tobago entrusted to manage your affairs, you are doing so judiciously, you are doing so honestly, and in the best interest of the people of Tobago. That is my job, and I will do it without fear, favor, malice, or any kind of name, anything you all want to call me. If you want, imagine you have issues where, in the heat of the moment, you may say, I didn't say this way because, of course, you know what you intend to say and intend to mean, and you come here to use that. I've put out so much information in the public that has been irrefutable. That is a fact. So to come here and pretend and to try to tarnish my character, I'm not the one who people in Tobago now refer to as someone that always speaks untruth. I am not the one. There are people right in this house that people are saying, calling all kinds of names. So therefore, Madam, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we've been here a long day, and I don't want to keep us any longer, except to say to my colleagues that I believe that ultimately we all have an appreciation for right being right and wrong being wrong, no matter the color, the person, friend or foe. And if we all have that appreciation, understanding that is the least Tobago deserves and demands from the people entrusted with the authority to manage their affairs. This motion is very simple. This motion is very clear. The information that we produce is alarming, and I understand the member asking about widespread. This matter of these roads have been one of public conversation across Tobago. You have leading people within the chambers. Diane Haddad is on record talking about it. The deceased Mr. Hochoy Charles took offense to the way these roads were delivered. You have Martin George taking offense. This has been widely discussed. And every right-thinking Tobagonian, they have all expressed concerns as to the way these roads were delivered, to the point that it has crippled the Tobago economy, because when you take out, as the Secretary of Infrastructure explained one time, when you take out from the economy of Tobago these kind of large project funding and place it in the hands of contractors outside of Tobago, what you are in fact doing is building an economy elsewhere. That is economics 101. And therefore, I cannot for the life of me fathom why we would have an issue with the House agreeing to have the committee that is so empowered look at this matter. And all I would say as I wrap up is that Tobagonians understand the issue. Tobagonians have concerns about these 4 roads, and therefore Tobagonians, I recognize you all did what you did to defer this to very late in the evening, but Tobagonians are looking on, and Tobagonians will be the judge of each of us based on our vote. I so move. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer.
Member for Scarborough Mongraves.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. I rise on Standing Order 43, the right to reply. And as I sat and listened to especially the member for Darrell Spring.
Member.
Just a point of clarity. Standing Order 48.3 says a motion that is critical of the Secretary. We weren't talking about the Secretary. The motion was simply about projects.
43.
Sorry, but it speaks about being critical of a Secretary. This is not a motion of no confidence.
Leader.
No, just for your determination.
Please be seated.
Yeah. Just
The 43.2 also states or reflects adversely or is calculated to bring disrepute upon the Executive Council or an officer thereof. I certainly heard you mention the Chief Secretary on numerous occasions, and he is the leader of the Executive Council as well. So, and these are infrastructure projects as well. So
I just was asking for clarity, Mr.
no problem.
Presiding.
Member, you may join the.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. As I listened, it became, and it has become harder to respond to the issues that the minority seems to think are critical and of critical importance. Suffice to say that I would attempt to put the barest facts in the public space regarding what the minority side has said. The last administration sat in office for 21 years. And attempted only to execute projects that, what I consider to be projects that maintain a community. You look across the island and you could identify probably one development project. One. Every other project, playing fields, community centers, health centers, all designed only to keep Tobago in a state of flux where we cannot grow and cannot go forward. When we came into office, we inherited from my division alone a debt of over $500 million. $500 million for works executed across 3 programs to contractors who were selected without competitive tender, which we had to sort out. All of them have laid in the public space over and over and over the details of that, and I don't wish tonight to go through that again. The minority seems to think that the focus on details are going to move Tobago forward. And so, if I could muster up the Michael Bauer voice to say, and still undisputed lies, if I could bring it in this late hour, I would try. But at every step of the way, half-truths, innuendos, and in most cases, outright lies. And so it is with great difficulty that I rise to speak. But I am going to respond to a few items because I believe there is a philosophy of bullying that has overtaken the opposition in this house, probably copied from the other house, by the leader of the other house, that is displayed and has been displayed over the last 2 years, 3 years, where they feel that they can repeat a lie over and over and over and over, and therefore bully you into responding and bullying the public into accepting that this lie is truth. This motion is somehow trying to link the development program at the division to the meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. One group of projects is trying to link that, and somehow that motion makes it onto your other paper. I cannot understand it. I cannot. This idea of this bullying tactic to get the government side to find a way to hand select the same P&M contractor that they use. Because that's what they want, you know. Yes. For us to find a way, we must handpick them again. Yes. The minority talk about one of the contractors who wrote to say that the process was too short and he wasn't satisfied. One of the same contractors who submitted quotations and tender for work in half a day under the previous regime and saying that the 2 weeks period is too short. Hypocrisy. Bullying. They talk about the process of the roads being executed without approval. I'm thinking specifically of the one at Friendship. The airport, because you see there's a lack of understanding, and I don't want to get into a lecture this late night. There's a lack of understanding of basic contract management that is being displayed by the minority over and over and over. The airport project got its final approval from the THA for the half of the design that they submitted to us on the 12th of the 8th month, is August, it's late now.
the 12th of August 2024. The biggest project in Tobago tendered out, given to a Chinese contractor, where there was a clause in the contract for local content, and I understand the trouble with local content, but the Chinese contractor awarded the local content contract to the same contractor where the minority was buying the election, trying to convince the workers to scare them into voting for the PNM. In Studley Park, same contractor awarded back to the Chinese, I am told, for a fee of $5 million. That project got approval from the Ministry of the Division of Health in Tobago on the 12th of August 2024. And they sit on the other side trying to tell me who I believe in this house have the most experience in project and contract management, that you must get approval first. They talk about Smithfield and that the scope that they had on their cost estimate that was for $40 million was a different scope. Well, the scope is 95% identical, and we are happy that we were able to execute that work for half the cost, more than half the cost for that road. I don't want to say whether there was overestimating by the PNM. That's just the fact. We have attempted to execute projects, development projects that allow or facilitate economic development. And the Smithfield connector and the soon to come Sangsas Hill connector will do just that. And we will do that as well this year. Right? $19 million, 19 days. Of course, we are proud of that. If I had the freedom or the approval to tell this house how members of the PNM government in Trinidad call around contractors in Trinidad to threaten them.
Point of order for what's exactly?
Member is again accusing members of the government. The standing order says the conduct of the president, members of the assembly, members of parliament, or judges or other person engaged in the administration of justice shall not be raised except on a substantive motion. This motion.
Remember, I sat here, you spoke about the chief secretary extensively, right? And remember, I will not allow you to dish out and then you seek protection from me. Remember, continue.
Mr. Deputy, I thank you, but I want to say to the minority.
Speaker, there is the standing orders is not emotion. The standing orders are clear. And is it that you are not going to follow the standing orders?
So remember, by standing here and insisting that what you are saying to me is you have continually broke those standing orders and are now.
Mr. Deputy, I raise on a point of order, which is 45.8. Is it that the member has breached the standing order or not?
Member, continue presentation.
Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will. I come from a family of educators, and I believe that I have not broken the standing orders, and I would say it again. If I had the authority to tell this house how the information I have
that the ministers of government in Trinidad and the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago call contractors to threaten them if they do any work in Tobago, they will get no work in Trinidad, then I would say it.
Members, member for Daryl Springwood. As far as I am concerned, I am the deputy presiding officer that is presiding over this house, right? There are procedures to deal with all aspects of this house. I have ruled, and my ruling is final. Member, continue, please.
The problem is, though, that I don't have the authority, so I won't say it. They talk about this whole concept of design build finance because they do not understand what we are trying to do. We have had to resort to
Member, please be seated. Minority Councillor, I gave you protection when you were presenting, and I would like the same courtesy now, please. Continue, member.
You know, I wrote a long speech for this thing, but I'll have to ad-lib most of it. They talk about design build finance, but they don't understand it. We've had to employ various procurement modalities at the division in order to move the development program forward. One of them is design build finance. And whether we appreciate the complexities of FIDIC project management, FIDIC contract management or not, the reality is that project contract management is a dynamic thing. And along the continuum of a project, there will be opportunities to negotiate, renegotiate, to ensure that we are getting the best out of the contract as clients. And we will continue to do that, whether they try to bully us or not, because we are in the process of ensuring that we are delivering to Tobago projects that the PNM could not have done for 21 years. And that is what the problem really is. The road at Friendship has been on the books since Hotray was in office. They couldn't do it. They had a man squatting down there after they buy the land. Have him squatting down there, playing nice, because I don't know if he's Trinidad and they're playing nice to him. Since 2013, just leave him there and hoping that somehow after they buy the land, supposedly unencumbered, that the man will have rights. We have to deal with that in the court as well, and we will. We have finally gotten to the place because, you see, the reach of the PNM is unmeasurable, you know. Unmeasurable. And when you oppose the PNM, I want to be going to understand this, you know. When you oppose the PNM, you have to be of such hard andesite metal from Stolly Park that you can't bend and you can't budge and you have to keep going forward. Yes, sir. Yes. You see just how the UNC had to buckle under the lies of the PNM in Trinidad and had to change ministers. You had to develop that fortitude. Yes. And we in Tobago had to develop that fortitude. That fortitude that allows us to say, as real Africans, We will bend, but we will not break. They have been attempting throughout the 21 years to create this dependency of the citizenry of Tobago on the state. And the video they put out about the so-called dual carriageway road that they plan to build and it looking nice and pure, how they design and they do this survey, all of that is gimmick. Gimmickry. The reality is that they themselves abandoned the road. Not because we started this one. They abandoned the road because the cost of building the road was too high for them. That's what the reality is. And if you push me, I'll put it in the public too because I have that information. So don't come to the house. Don't come to the house. I took a decision not to criticize the airport, you know. I came to office. I took a decision not to criticize the airport because, you know, we've been starved in Tobago for real infrastructure development. And the airport, misconceived as it is, presents an opportunity for Tobago to use some infrastructure that it provides to springboard. But let me just say for the public that, let me ask, what is the problem the airport terminal is trying to solve?
At this moment.
What is the problem? Is it lack of flights into Tobago? Is it lack of people into Tobago? Is it that the terminal was too small and they wanted to just get a bigger one? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And let me tell you, it couldn't be that the terminal was too small because what the man named J.C. Charles in St. Lucia was bringing in 200,000 people in Castries for years through a little plyboard terminal. So it couldn't be that. It couldn't be that the location was bad because the whole world knows that if they had extended the original terminal north was the ideal thing.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, relevance to the motion.
I'm speaking to the bullying
Member,
of the PNM.
Relevance, again, the motion has nothing to do with that.
member, continue to your motion and please stay in line with the.
And so if the airport project was properly conceived, not only the road would have been built.
Again, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the member is continuing and it is not relevant to the substantive motion on the order paper.
Member, continue. Member for Palatavia Space Island, sorry. Yes. Members. I know it is quite late. People may be tired. They may be anxious. But I warn you all about parliamentary language. I also would like to advise you all that everyone in here is an example to the population of Tobago, and I would like you all to kindly be guarded in your behavior going forward. Member, continue.
I had to get a notepad to stop where I was in this house. If the airport project was properly planned, we would have had discussions now with airlines to bring people through there. They tell us that the airport can what is the word, accommodate 3 million people per year. And that's what they're building it for, to be able to take 3 million people. If we're lucky, we will be using this square footage at the terminal because it's only 18,000 people coming. Not a flight. They negotiate flight out of Africa, flight out of the Middle East, every flight landing in Port of Spain. They have Cal today flying from Piaco to Crown Point to Barbados, and it costing us $700 less to catch a flight in Trinidad and in Barbados and coming back. They prefer to make Grantley Adams their hub than Crown Point. But they're building a 1.3 volume to almost $2 billion airport in Tobago. So don't come to tell me about misuse and misalignment of funds, because I am buying that. We have undertaken 5 projects. We've undertaken 5 projects through the design, build, finance modality. And I am happy to say that in the first quarter of 2022, the biggest single civil infrastructure project in the last 30 years of the Tobago House of Assembly will be finished in this fiscal first quarter 2025. And as hard and difficult as it is to pay for it, we will find a way, because the Secretary of Finance and the Chief Secretary are going to give me the money to pay for it. We have moved with the 300 steps. Yes. And built a road. In King Peter Bay, where a man say that he was sitting on the steps since Flora. And today we've built it. So, for those who have never built anything in their entire life, to come to somehow malign my character, I am happy to see that for my children who are doing medicine wherever they are, 80% is an A+. 4 out of 5 is an A. And I'm happy to say that. And I do not apologize for it. So this motion is an attempt to put in the public space this idea that hopefully they can talk about in the elections to come. Because they have the young brother in Trinidad who they can't defend. So they tell themselves, let me attack TPP because young brother come into Tobago and we can't defend him. How we going to defend him? That's what this motion is about. But let me just say that the young brother experiment was bound to happen, because you can't have a political party.
Remember, you have 5 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Relevance, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. We are talking about roads into the outreach in Trinidad. Yeah, and P&M business.
Member for Darius Wilburn, noted. Member for Scarborough Mongrace, continue and please stick within line of the motion.
If you allow me, Mr. Deputy President Officer, I'll type back, you know. But the guy is impatient.
Wait.
I sat and I listened to his diatribe whole night. I may say a word.
Member, proceed with your contribution.
The experiment of the young brother was bound to happen to the PNM, because the country knows that the group that the young brother represents is what the PNM is. And it is that dynamic that is taking place in Port of Spain that they're trying to counter in Tobago by talking about these roads that clearly benefits the people of Tobago, that clearly brings private sector monies into the public space, and that gives us the wiggle room to deliver for the people of Tobago. That's what this is. And so I am not apologetic, and I will no longer go into a defense of details that I have defended for the last 3 years. They asked the question about 5 times in the House. They asked it outside. I go on the media over and over, and the same question, because somehow bullies rule the space. bullies rule this space. I will not be bullied. And I will go forward. And the Division of Infrastructure will go forward. And we will accomplish something wonderful again in 2025. And hopefully that will quell the noise that comes from Darrell Spring Whim. I thank you.
Honorable members, the question put is, whereas in September 2022, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Farley Augustine, announced 4 emergency road projects, namely Dutchford to Smithfield Connector Road, the Milford Road to Pigeon Point Road connecting through Milford Court and Bonacourt Development, the Shervan Road to Storby Local Road Connector Road, and the Lamy Road, Argyle to Roxborough, Bloody Bay Connector Road, citing urgent infrastructural needs in preparation for the inaugural Tobago Carnival in October 2022. And whereas widespread concerns have been raised regarding the procurement process, project execution, and overall transparency of these projects, and whereas each of these road projects has faced significant challenges, and whereas the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, which is responsible for scrutinizing the expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly, has been unable to do its work due to the unavailability of the members on the majority side. And whereas it is the responsibility of this Assembly and its relevant committee to ensure that public funds are expended efficiently, transparently, and in accordance with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Be it resolved that this House calls for an audit into the procurement process and the challenges encountered during the execution of these road projects. Be it further resolved that this House mandates the immediate convening of the PAC to urgently consider these expenditures in keeping with the principles of good governance. All in favor, say aye. Any against, say no. No. The noes have it. Motion. Division. Member for Darrell Spring Whim. Sorry.
Assemblyman Asurisha Hackett, Member Petezal Dekato, how do you vote? Assemblyman Fali Augustine, Member for Paladeville Ansumi, side, how do you vote?
No.
Assemblyman Dr. Feet Webner, Member for Belgarden Glamorgan, how do you vote?
Nope.
Assemblyman Joel Sampson, Member for Bonacourt Crown Point, how do you vote?
No.
Assemblyman Ian Pollard, Member for Mason Murray, how do you vote?
No.
Assemblyman Trevor James, Member for Scarborough Mongrace, how do you vote?
No.
Assemblyman Wayne Clark, Member for Lambo Lowlands, how do you vote? No. Assemblyman Terence Baines, Member for Bethel New Grange, how do you vote? No. Assemblyman Megan Morrison, Member for Mount St. George Goodwood, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Tasha Boris, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Orlando Kerr, how do you vote? No. Councillor Pedaldan Bender, how do you vote?
Yes.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, Member for Darrell Spring Whim, how do you vote?
Yes, for transparency.
We have 11 noes and 2 yes. Motion not carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I now beg to move that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable House, the question put, Honorable House, the question put is that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say no. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.